How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Samach Zayin, Daf 67 of Masechta Gittin. Friends, Daf 67, we're going to wrap up the sixth parak of Masechta Gittin, and then we're going to start the next parak of Mishachazu Kordiakus, which is going to just go straight into 1, 2, 3, 3 pages straight of insane Agadata. So we're going to get started with that today. Okay. Well, we're going to start in Daf Samach Zayin Amud Aleph, about 15 lines into the Amud, Gufa, where it says Gufa in the middle of the line. Amar Shmuel, Amar Rebbe, Halacha Reb Yossi, the Amar Milei Lo Mimson L'Shaliach. So Shmuel, I quoted Rebbe, who said that the halacha is like Reb Yossi, who says that Milei Lo Mimson L'Shaliach, that instructions that somebody gives to a messenger, that messenger cannot pass on those instructions to a different messenger. Amar Lefanov, Reb Shimon bar Rebbe. Reb Shimon bar Rebbe asks his father Rebbe, Me'achar Reb Meir v'Chanina ishonu cholkan al Reb Yossi, Mara Rebbe lomar halacha Reb Yossi. But if Reb Meir and Chanina Ishono in our Mishnah argue on Reb Yossi, so why are you paskening like Reb Yossi? Seems like he's the minority opinion. So Omar Lo, listen to this, friends. We've seen this before in Masechta Eruvin, as we already know the greatness of Reb Yossi. Rebbe says to Reb Shimon bar Rebbe, Shtok b'ni shtok, quiet my son, quiet. Lo ra'isa es Reb Yossi. You can only say that because you never saw Reb Yossi. Ilmele ra'iso Nimuko imo. If you had ever met Reb Yossi, if you had ever seen Reb Yossi, you would know Nimuko imo, that Reb Yossi always has his reasons, right? We always paskin like Reb Yossi whenever there's a machlokas between Reb Yossi and one of his colleagues. So we always paskin like Reb Yossi. The Tanya, we learn in a brayse, Isi ben Yehuda ayamona, the Shvachim Shel Chacham, this is super interesting. Isi ben Yehuda would list the praise of the Chachamim. Reb Meir Chacham v'Sofer. Reb Meir was a sage as well as a scribe. Reb Yehuda Chacham l'chsheyirtze. I don't know what this means, but it seems extremely interesting. Reb Yehuda was a sage when he wanted to be a sage. Okay. Reb Tarfon Gal Shel Gozin. Reb Tarfon was a pile of nuts. Rashi quotes the Avos to Reb Nosson, that just like a pile of nuts, if you remove one nut, then the whole pile kind of comes crumbling. So also Reb Tarfon, you would ask him a question, and he would just start crumbling down on you with, answers from all sorts of places, Mishnayos, Gemaras, Halachos, Agadah, everywhere. You'd ask him one thing, all of a sudden, before you knew it, you got sugyas flying all over the place. Rabbi Shmuel Chanus Miuzenis. Rabbi Shmuel was a fully stocked store. That if ever you go to the store, there's always what you need. Also, Rabbi Shmuel, if ever you had a question, if ever you needed anything, he always knew the answer. Rabbi Kiva Otzer Balum. Rabbi Kiva was a compartmentalized container. That Rashi is very interesting. He gives two pshots, but I think that they're basically very similar. I think that they build on each other, if I understand correctly. Which is that Rabbi Kiva, when he learned. So he learned, it's not like he first learned Chumash and then he learned Mishnah or whatever. He learned everything. He would just, fill up his box with everything. Mishnah, Torah, Agadah, everything. Then he would go home and he would review and he would sift it out and he would sort it out into categories so that it was clear. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, Kupas HaRochlin. Rabbi Yochanan, and then Rabbi Akiva would then teach it to his students in a compartmentalized way. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri Kupas HaRochlin. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri was a spice merchant container, a spice box, I guess, of a spice merchant that it has all the different spices separated and organized individually. That I guess he knew all the different parts of Torah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Kupa Shel B'samim. Elazar ben Azariah was a container of of spices, but unlike the spice merchant who has everything that you need and everything's organized neatly, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah had everything, but not kind of, it sounds like not sort of in the same level of organization as Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Mishnah of Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Kavinoke, as we've seen before, that the Mishnah of Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov was measured but clean. That Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov doesn't often come up and he doesn't often express his view in the Beis HaMedrash, but when he does, we paskin like him. Rabbi Yossi nimuko imo. Rabbi Yossi always has his reasons with him. Rabbi Shimon tochein harbe motzi kimo. Rabbi Shimon grinds a whole lot and loses very little. Tana mashkach kimo umashimotzi enumotzi elasubin. That Rabbi Shimon only forgets a little bit of his learning, and anything that he forgets, it's just the chaff. He doesn't forget. He only forgets unimportant things. V'chein omer Rabbi Shimon the Talmidav, and so said Rabbi Shimon to his students, to his pupils, Bonai shnumidosai, my sons, learn my Torah. Shemidosai trumis mitrumis, midos of Shor Rabbi Akiva, because my Torah that I'm teaching you is the most refined of the refined of what Rabbi Akiva taught me. Wow. I feel like I need to review that, remember all these things. Incredible stuff over here. Gufa, Amr l'shnayim, im l'sofer v'yichtov, v'lefloni ufloni v'yachtim. So we said earlier, at the end of yesterday's daf, we said that if a fellow says to two people, go and say to a scribe, and he should write the get, v'lefloni ufloni v'yachtim, and say to these two people, and they should sign it. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav kosher, velosiyos zos b'Yisrael. Rav Huna says in the name of Rav that this is technically kosher, but you shouldn't do it. Amar le'ula Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Nachman le'ula, me'achad the kosher amai l'siyos zos b'Yisrael. So if it's kosher, why shouldn't it be done? So Amar le'chashin l'shem tiskor edim. Well, we're concerned that maybe these two people will hire other witnesses to give these instructions, and we know midi lo mimsron the shaliach. And therefore it will be a problem because they can't do that. But are we really concerned about that? We learn in the Brayse, al sdei witnesses who are signed on a purchase document of a field, get isha or on a get. We're not concerned that they signed falsely on the get. So yeah, we're not concerned that they will do a maise fraudulently, but a dibura, merely instructing, we do have to be concerned about. And therefore, when a husband says to two people, say to a scribe to write the get and to two other people to sign it, we shouldn't do that because we're concerned that they might hire other people to do it, and because they're just, it's just instructions, they might think it's okay, and it can be problematic. Amr l'shnayim, imr l'sofer v'yichtov. Now, in this case, where the husband says to two people, imr l'sofer v'yichtov, say to a sofer to write it, ve'atem chasomu, but you have to be the ones to sign it. So in that case, they're not going to hire somebody else to do it because they have to be the ones to sign it. So if Chizda Amr kosher, so if Chizda says it's kosher because we don't have to be concerned that they're going to hire anybody else, so it's fine. I'm sorry, Rav Chizda Amar kosher velosei also. Rav Chizda says it's kosher, but you shouldn't do it because we're concerned, that even though in this case it's fine, but out of a gezerah, out of concern of the other case, when the instructions are to tell other people to sign. Rabbi Bar Bachana Amar kosher v'sei also. Rabbi Bar Bachana says no, it's kosher and you can even do it. It's no problem. Rav Nachman Amar kosher velosei also. Rav Sheshes Amar kosher v'sei also. Rabbi Amar kosher velosei also. Rav Yosef Amar kosher v'sei also. Okay, so we have these different pairs of Amoraim who are split between whether, in this case, it's allowed or not. V'ika da'apechlu, are those who reverse the opinions of Rab and Rav Yosef. Okay, fine. So it seems that in that case of telling two people to instruct the sofer to write the get, but they themselves should sign it, it's split between whether that's okay or not. Amr la asara kisvu get, if a fellow says to 10 people, write a get, so if a fellow says to 10 people, write a get and give it to my wife, okay, so one person can write for all of them. That's fine. But kulchem ksovu, But if he says, I want all of you to write it, well then, echad kosid b'mayman kulam. One person writes it, but all of them have to be present. Holichu get leishti. If a fellow says, to a bunch of people, bring a get to my wife, echad molich ayidei kulam. Okay, so one person brings the get, and that's enough. But kulchem holichu. But if he says, I want all of you to bring the get, well then echad molich b'mayman kulam. One of them brings the get, but all of them have to be there as well. Ibaru le'asakasha mone oson mahu. What if he counted them? Right? So there's a bunch of people there, and he doesn't say all of you, but he says 1, 2, 3, 4, right? He counts them. So mana, where am I? But mana osan mau. So Rav Huna Amar mana einu kekulchem. Rav Yochanan mishum Belazar d'min Roma Amar mana areu kekulchem. So Rav Huna says that mana is not like kulchem, right? That even if you have 10 people and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it's not the same as saying kulchem. Whereas Rav Yochanan says the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Roma, Amar Mane Hareu ki Kulchem. It is the same as Kulchem. Amar Rav Papa, and says Rav Papa v'lo pligi. They actually agree. Hadumana kulu v'hadumana miktsasayim. It depends if they're counting. Depends if you're counting all of them or if you're only counting some of them. Right? If there were 10 people there, did you count all 10? Meaning, so you didn't say Kulchem, but you said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Or did you only say some of them? Right? Like 1, 2, 3, 4. So it can be explained both ways, right? One way to explain it would be that if you count all 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so then it's basically the same thing as saying kulchem. But if you only counted like 4 of them, well then you're saying that, you don't really care, and then you don't need all 4 of those, you just need 2 of them, 2 of the 4 to sign it. But there are those who say the opposite, which is when you count all of them, so in that case, you don't actually need all of them to sign it, right? Because if he wanted all of them to sign it, he would have said kulchem. From the fact that he just counted them individually, it doesn't mean that they do not all need to sign it. But if you would say like 1, 2, 3, 4, then all 4 of them would need to sign it, because he's saying, I specifically want all 4 of you to sign it. So, okay, fine. Asking Rav Yehuda Begita, Rav Yehuda made a takana that in a get, when he says the kulchem, right? If he says kulchem, well then you have to write into the get that when you're writing the get, you write ksovu, that the fellow said that we should write it. O kulchon, either all of you, o kol chad v'chad minchon, or even just one of you, right? So that just so that if only one of them writes it, so then nobody's going to say, well, you needed all of them. So you write into the get that no, it's either one. Chasomu, oh, right, and when it comes to the signing, O kulchon, either all of you, O kol trei minchon, or any 2 of you, sign it. O vilu, bring the get to my wife, O kulchon, either all of you, O kol chad v'chad minchon, or any one of you can bring it. Amarava says, Rava zimnin degoy is leile dibure, but sometimes the scribe, when writing the get, might cut off the writing, ve'amar kulchon, ve'lo amar kol chad minchon, that it'll only say kulchon, but he won't say kol chad minchon, any individual one of you, and then if not everybody was there, people at the yentis, Ve'asi the ifsule, and the yentis will start saying that the get's puzzle and it's a mess. Amar Rava, rather says Rava, ksovu kol chad minchon, that rather you write in the get that the husband said to write it, any one of you, chasomu, to sign it, kol trei minchon, any 2 of you, ovilu kol chad minchon, bring it to my wife, any one of you, hajan Allah cha'omer, we will come back to you. Perek HaOmer. Now we start the Perek of Misha Acho Kordiakus. We're going to learn a short Mishnah and then jump straight into some Agarata. Misha Acho Kordiakus, a fellow who was smitten by a Kordiakus. The Gemara is going to say, what's a Kordiakus? And he says, Kisvu get leishti. Basically, let's just say this, he's not in a lucid state of mind. Kisvu get leishti, and he says, right, to get to my wife, lo amar klum. Ignore him. If a fellow says, right, to get to my wife, when he's lucid, but then he was chapped by a kordiakus, and then he says, I don't write to get to my wife, don't listen to what he said post kordiakus. Nishtatek, if he went silent and he can no longer speak, and they said to him, and they said, should we write a get to your wife? And he nodded. Bodkin also shlosha paimim. We check him 3 times. Im Amar alav lab al hein hein. If he answered yes when he was supposed to say yes and no when he was supposed to say no, so then he knows what he's saying. So if he's nodding that you should write that a get should be written and given to his wife, so then you write and deliver a get to his wife. Okay. My kodyakus. What's a kodyakus? Well, he drank too much wine, new wine from the wine press. For this, so why do you have to use the fancy kordiakus term? Just say somebody who drank too much new wine. Well, it's teaching us that the spirit that has overcome the fellow is called the kordiakus spirit. Who cares? The kmiya. Well, if you're going to write an amulet to get him to free him from this kordiakus spirit, so then you know that it's called the kordiakus spirit to write for the amulet. Mayasuse, what is the solution? What's the remedy? Bisra sumka, lean meat, agumre, broiled on coals, v'chamra marka, and thin wine. Okay? And kind of watered down wine. That's the solution. Omer Abaye says Abaye Omerly aimed that his mother, that of course Abaye's mother passed away shortly after his birth, but it's his nurse who raised him. So his mother told him, his nurse, right? Okay, Omerly aimed. The Shimsha Bas Yoma, so if a fellow has a 1-day-old heat stroke, Kuza Demaya. So you have to drink a pitcher of water. Bas Trey Yome, a 2-day heat stroke, Sikure, bloodletting. Bas Tosu Yom, a 3-day heat stroke, Bis Sumka Agumri V'Chamer Marka, lean meat on coals, broiled on coals and thin wine. The Prime Minister of Eretz Yisrael the other day was out in the sun and I think he got heat stroke. He just needs to drink a little water, I guess. A pitcher of water. The Shimsha Atikta, but if it's a long heat stroke, Lacey Tarnagola Uchmesei, so take a black chicken with a Karish Shesiva Erev, cut it, length and width, with a Galche Limtziasa Deresha, and shave your head in the middle, like a mohawk where you leave the hair in the middle, fakert, you shave the head in the middle, Velosve Ilave, and then I guess put the carcass of the chicken on the reverse, V'nanche ilave, and then leave it there ad the misrach until it rots. V'linchos v'leikum b'maya ad savari, and then go into water until your neck ad the cholish until you start to faint. Ad the cholish until you faint. Ilave till the world starts to get faint. V'limod, and then stand up. V'lisalik, and get out of there. V'leisiv, and sit down. V'ilo, and if the whole black chicken rotting on the head thing doesn't, I guess is not an available option, lechol karte, eat leeks, v'leinchos, and then v'leikum b'maya ad savare, ad cholish alma ilove, and then go into the water until your neck, until the world becomes faint, v'limod, and get up, v'lislik v'leishev, v'leisiv, and to get out of the water and sit down. The shimsha, bisra, Sumka agumre v'chamra marka. So if for a fever, so you eat lean meat on broiled on coals with thin wine. But the tilga for chills, bisra shmeina. So fakert, you need fatty meat agumre broiled on coals v'chamra chaya and strong wine. V'amim chsida ki avim mitzayin lebeirej galusa. There of Amim Chsida, when the servants of the Reish Galusa were giving him a hard time, that I guess apparently he was machmir as a posek, maybe whatever it was. The servant, not the Reish Galusa himself, but the servants of the Reish Galusa were not very nice. Havu magnule atilga, they would force Rav Amim to sleep in the snow, and he would get chills. The machur amule, then the next day, when he was sick because of it, when he had the chills, they would say to him, oh, what should we bring you, master? Now, Omar, Rav Am Chasida said, look, I know that Hanikol de Aminalu mepach apche. I know that anything that I ask them for, because they're evil, they're going to do the opposite. So Amalu, so he said, now of course we said that the remedy for chills is fatty meat broiled on coals with raw wine. So Yidavka said, Fakert, Bisasumka agumre v'chamer marka. Can you bring me some lean meat broiled on coals with thin wine? Aisule, and predictably they brought for him inu bisra shmena, fatty meat, agumre, broiled on coals, v'chamer chaya, and raw wine, which is essentially the remedy that he needed for his unfortunate state that they put him in. Shama Yalta, Rav Nachman's wife Yalta, who was the daughter of the Reish Galusa, right? Rav Nachman was married to Yalta, who was the daughter of the Reish Galusa. And Yalta heard of the terrible stuff that the servants of the Reish Galusa did to Rav Amram Chasida. So she took him to the bathhouse. He stood in the or he went into the water of the bathhouse that all like the red from the wine, from the raw wine and the thick meat, so the fatty meat, so it sweated out of his body and into the bath, and it was red, and it was like the bath was like full of blood. And his flesh was all blotchy because like it was turning pale. Rav Yosef, if he had the chills, he would grind stuff. Rav Sheshes would like pick up heavy beams in order to sweat. Omar that work is stark because it warms up the fellow. Omar the Reish Galusa says to Rav Sheshes, my time is soid margabon. Rav Sheshes, why don't you eat with us? Why don't you come have a suda with us by the Reish Galusa? Omar Tlomaylu Avde. Well, to be quite frank, the reason why I don't have a suda with you is because I know that the servants of the Reish Galusa are shtekol nudniki. That they are suspect of serving Aver Menachai, of removing limbs from live animals and serving them. So Reish Galusa says, oh, come on, what are you basing that on? So Shesha says, I'll prove it to you. Rav Sheshes instructed his attendant, Zil Gnov, go and steal from the kitchen of the Reish Galusa. Bring me one of the legs of the animal that they are preparing. So the servant, the attendant brought the leg of the animal that they're preparing to him. And then he said to the servants of the Reish Galusa, I would like for you to bring out the cuts of meat that you are preparing. So they brought out the cuts of the animal that they were preparing, and sure enough, there were only 3 legs present. Osivu Osivu Kame. Amalu, he said to them, he says, I don't understand. One of the legs are missing. Was this a 3-legged animal? So Psok Aisu Chadame Alma. So they ran out and they somehow came up with a 4th leg. Osivu Kame. And they put the 4th leg in front of Rav Sheshes and the Reish Galusa. Now the question is, where did that 4th leg come from? Because after all, the Reish Galusa's attendant had the 4th leg. So where did their 4th leg come from? They must have taken it from a live animal. It must be Aver Menachai. So Rav Sheshes says to his attendant, Osivu nami lach didach. Take the leg that you have and bring it out. Osva, and you put it down. Amalu, Rav Sheshes said to them, now there are 5 legs here. Was this a 5-legged animal? So Amar Lei, so the Reish Galusa understood that his servants were taking Aver Menachai. So the Reish Galusa says to Rav Sheshes, if that's the case, li'avdu kame demar v'leichol. So what if the servants prepare the food in front of, in the sort of hashgacha of your attendant, and you'll know that everything was done in a kosher manner, and then we can eat together. So Shesha says, okay, give all it. as long as I could be certain that I'm not eating Aver min HaChai, so Beseder. Krivutaka Kamayu, they brought a table in front of them. V'aisu Kame Bisra, and they brought before Rav Sheshes meat. V'osivu Kame, and they put it in front of him. Ristana dechanko chamsa, some kind of meat that has a bone in there that would basically, if Rav Sheshes would eat it, it would kill him. Now, Rav Sheshes, of course, was blind, so therefore, it was very risky. They figured that they were gonna, they were kind of upset with Rav Sheshes for calling them out in front of the Reish Galusa. They basically gave him a piece of meat that he would choke on. V'shakla karcha, goshashe, so he was kind of poking around with his utensils. V'shakla karcha b'sudre, and he took the meat and he put it in his scarf. After they were done eating, Amrile, so the servants of the Reish Galusa said to him, Igon Evlon Kasa de Chaspa, a silver cup, a silver goblet was stolen from us. And when they were checking, searching Rav Sheshes for this silver cup, Ashkechua, the Krucha Besudre, they found the meat that was meant to choke Rav Sheshes, that it was hidden in his scarf. Amrile, they said to him, Chazimar, Telo Mechel, Kabai El Tza'urun. So they said to Rav Sheshes, you see, as they said to the Reish Galusa, you see, Rav Sheshes, he's just here to give us a hard time. Amrilehu. So Rav Sheshes said to them, Ona Mechel Achli, I ate the meat, V'taimi Bei, Taimi de Chivra. I tasted in it the taste of leprosy. You were feeding an animal that was a leper, that had shchin. To which they said, no, there was no leprosy animals over here. So Rav Sheshes says, look, check the part of the animal from where the meat came, you'll see. It was a leper. It was a leper animal. Rav Chisda says, that if you have a black spot on a white animal or a white spot on a black animal, lakusahi, it's leprosy. Baduk ashkechua, and they checked, and sure enough, they found that it was a leper. Kikonofik, when Rav Sheshes was then leaving the Reish Galusa, the servants of the Reish Galusa were still trying to get him. So Karule Beira, so they dug a pit. Now, of course, Rav Sheshes was blind. Vishadule tzifsa ilave, and they put a mat over the pit so that he would fall, step on the mat and fall into the pit. V'amrile leisimar linoch, and they suggested to Rav Sheshes, hey, Rav Sheshes, why don't you go and rest on the couch? And then he'd have to walk to the couch and fall in the pit. Nachle Rav Chisda me'achori, Rav Chisda kind of growled in Rav Sheshes from behind him to kind of say, hey, don't trust these people. Amar le linuka, Rav Sheshes said to, I guess, some yingle who was there, Psokli psukecha, tell me what pasuk, you're learning. Amar le, and the young fellow says, Netei licha al yimincha o al smalecha, go to the right or to the left, but don't go straight. Amar le l'shamoi, so if Sheshes says to his attendant, Maika chozis, what do you see? Amar le tzifsud d'shadyo, he says, I see that there's a mat on the floor. Amar le, Rav Sheshes says, Hadar mina, stay away from that mat. Don't have me walk over that mat. Levasu dinofak, after Rav Sheshes survived and left the Reish Galusa, Amar le Rav Chisda says to Rav Sheshes, how did you know to avoid the mat? Well, for one, you kind of, indicated to me that I should be careful. And secondly, that Yingle mentioned the pasuk that said, go right or left, but don't go straight. And also I know that the servants of the Reish Galusa can't be trusted. They're going to try to kill me. So therefore I knew that I had to go around. Friends, that was Daf Samach Zayin of Masechta Gittin. There was some really interesting stuff on this Daf. We wrapped up the 6th parak with some of the discussions, some of the technical discussions with Mile Mimsur and the Shaliach, stuff like that, which is a little bit technical. But we saw all these attributes of the Tanoim, which was super interesting. And once again, we saw Rabbi Yossi Nimuko Imo, which is pretty awesome. And then we started the 7th out of 9 prakim. We're making some serious progress here on Masechta Gittin. Masechta Gittin is 90 daf. We're already almost up to 70. So we're in the 7th parak out of 9. So we're really doing a good job over here. We started the parak Misha Acho, Asha Achazo Kordiakus, and we jumped into a bunch of Agadata. The Agadata will continue for the next 2 or 3 days. And tomorrow we're going to learn the story of Shlomo when he was building the temple, and the shamir worm that was used to hew the stones, and Ashmadai, the king of the demons. So interesting stuff. Friends, that was daf Samach Ches, I believe. Samach Zayin, Samach Ches, Samach Zayin of Masechta Gittin. I hope you enjoy. Peace out.